I was stretched out on a faded blue love seat in my small third-floor apartment on the east side of Charlotte, North Carolina. One hand cupped a mug of ginger tea, while the other rested over my eyes, trying to dim the ache triggered by the endless buzz of my phone. On the coffee table, my screen lit up again. Calls from my mom, my dad, and yes, Marcus. Always those three names. The ones I used to drop everything for. The same names that now flashed in loops, desperate, like they could call me back into the life I left behind. It had been 6 months. 6 quiet, deliberate months since I walked away from the home I'd spent years trying to keep afloat. No dramatic exit. No slamming doors or teary goodbyes. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just quietly packed a few changes of clothes, my old Dell laptop, and my finance binder into a worn canvas duffel bag and left as the sun dipped behind the brick buildings on Tremont Avenue. No one stopped me. No one even looked up. They never expected Erin, the easy daughter, the stable one, to actually leave. I was the one who quietly handled the power bills when they forgot. The one who always spotted Marcus when he needed just a bit more time between jobs. I used to think that made me strong. That being the dependable one was noble. But sitting here now, surrounded by the silence of a place that finally feels mine, I've started to see it differently. I had spent nearly a decade propping up a system I never agreed to, a house built on the assumption that I would always show up, no matter what it cost me. The phone buzzed again, a sharp pulse against the wood. I didn't need to check who it was. I could hear my mom's voice before even playing the voicemail. How could you walk out on your family like this? If you still love us, call me back right now. But I didn't reach for it. Not this time. I leaned back against the armrest and exhaled. Every unanswered ring felt like one more string snapping loose from the invisible net that had held me for years. My name is Erin Langston. I'm 28. I earned a full scholarship to UNC Charlotte. I work as a financial analyst at a firm downtown. And for a long time, I believed that if I kept my head down, worked hard, stayed quiet, and said yes, often enough, they'd finally see me, appreciate me, love me for who I was. But now I know the truth. The more I did, the less I mattered. The one time I didn't say yes, the phone wouldn't stop ringing. Because for the first time, I wasn't the fixer. I was gone. And they weren't calling because they missed me. They were calling because the machine had stopped working. I didn't always feel this way. Back then, I thought I was just being a good daughter, helping out during tough times, doing what needed to be done until things got better. But until things got better, turned into a way of life. I became the silent backbone of a household that never asked how much I could actually carry. When Marcus lost his barista job, for the 3rd time, it was me who filled his gas tank so he could drive to interviews. When my parents missed their payment on the new refrigerator, I sent $800 the same day. And when the power company threatened to shut everything off, I paid that bill too, even though I had to push my own rent out 2 weeks just to make it happen. They never asked if I was okay. They never wondered if I was eating enough or sleeping well. But when Marcus needed a new laptop to get back on track with his online classes, Mom opened a credit card without blinking. A brand new MacBook, no hesitation. He dropped out 3 weeks later. I remember sitting on my bedroom floor staring at the cracked screen of my secondhand computer, my only tool for work and budgeting, and thinking, why does trying mean more than doing? Marcus is 4 years older than me, but in our family, you'd swear I was the oldest. He got excuses. I got expectations. When he walked out of his bookstore job because the manager was too bossy, Mom said no one should have to stay in a toxic environment. When he wrecked Dad's car, the first words out of Dad's mouth were, "Accidents happen." But when I got a full ride to UNC Charlotte, all I heard was, "Couldn't you have picked a school closer to home? Marcus might need the car." When I got hired at one of the top financial consulting firms in the state, Mom didn't say congratulations. She asked who would take them to their doctor's appointments now that I'd be working downtown. I don't remember the last time someone in that house said they were proud of me. Maybe they never have. Maybe I stopped needing to hear it a long time ago and just forgot to notice. What I do remember are the times they didn't say it. Like when I covered the entire cost of repainting the house, or when I paid Marcus's registration for an art course he never finished. They didn't say thank you. They said, "Can you also cover the water bill this month? It's a little tight." At first, I believed the story we all told ourselves. That it was temporary. That we were helping each other. That families stick together. But eventually, the asks became automatic. "Aaron, can you send $150 for the heater repair? Can you spot Marcus until payday?" There was never a payday. Just me, working overtime, coming home to a cold apartment I couldn't afford to heat, while my brother lounged on the couch, in a house I was secretly keeping from foreclosure. I wasn't their daughter anymore. I was the safety net no one saw, but everyone stood on. Quietly, like I owed it. The tipping point came quietly. Not with a scream or a slammed door, but with a single sentence that landed harder than any insult ever could. I was standing in the kitchen one evening, back home for the weekend, warming up a tray of groceries I'd brought from the store: salmon, frozen meals, a few of Dad's supplements. Mom stood at the counter, arms crossed, face tight. "Aaron," she said, "we need to talk." I didn't even get to take off my coat before she continued. "What you're sending every month, it's not enough anymore." Not enough. I stood there frozen, the microwave humming behind me. It was like every late night spent working overtime, every skipped vacation, every bill I'd quietly paid was erased in one breath. Dad stepped in from the living room, voice low and heavy. "You live alone. You make good money. Meanwhile, we're struggling every day. Doesn't that seem unfair to you?" I looked at the two people who raised me and realized they weren't even asking anymore. They were demanding more of a life that wasn't theirs to claim. I held my voice steady, even though my chest was tightening. "I've paid the mortgage for 2 years, I said. "Utilities, repairs, medical bills. What more do you want from me?" Marcus, of course, was sprawled on the couch, controller in hand, as if none of this involved him. Without looking, away from his screen, he added, "It's not like you're lacking anything. What's wrong with sharing a little?" I turned to face him, and for the first time, I didn't bite my tongue. "Sharing goes both ways, Marcus. All you've ever done is take." Mom's voice snapped like a whip. "That's enough, Aaron. You're being disrespectful." I took a breath, slow and sharp. "I'm being disrespectful for telling the truth?" Her lips curled into that tight, familiar line, the one she wore whenever she felt control slipping. "If it's that much of a burden to you," she said, "then walk out that door, and don't bother coming back." I don't think she realized she was saying the one thing I'd replayed in my head for years. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I didn't beg for her to take it back. I just dropped the grocery bag on the table, unopened, and turned away. "All right," I said, voice calm as glass. "Then I hear you, loud and clear." I walked out of that house like I was walking out of a burning building, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was abandoning something. I felt like I was escaping. The rain soaked through my coat, my shoes, my hair. But I didn't rush. I let it happen. Every step felt like a chain breaking. No one followed. No one called after me. Marcus muttered something under his breath, probably called me dramatic. But I didn't turn around. I was done being the fallback, the solution, the one they leaned on until I collapsed. That night, I wasn't the daughter who sacrificed. I was the woman who finally said, "Enough." I didn't go straight back to my apartment that night. Instead, I pulled into an old gas station 2 blocks from downtown and sat there for nearly 20 minutes, engine off, rain tapping against the windshield like it was trying to talk me out of it. I scrolled through my contacts. Mom, Dad, Marcus. Then slowly, deliberately, I pressed block. Not out of spite, not even out of anger. But because I knew, deep down, they wouldn't stop unless I made them. Back at my apartment, the silence hit different. It wasn't lonely. It was earned. I made tea, kicked off my soaked boots, and sat on the floor with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders. For the first time in years, no one was asking for anything. No last-minute bill, no doctor's appointment, no, just a little help this week. My apartment was small, less than 600 square feet. The hardwood floors creaked. The windows stuck in the winter, and the oven leaned slightly to the left. But it was mine. Entirely mine. And in that quiet, I started to heal. I set up a simple morning routine. Wake at 6:30, make coffee, open the blinds, breathe. I started walking around Freedom Park on weekends, listening to podcasts about saving, boundaries, burnout. I even signed up for an online course in personal investing, not because I needed it for work, but because it made me feel like I was choosing myself again. I cooked. I read. I learned what it felt like to spend a Saturday doing nothing for anyone else. Most importantly, I stopped sending money. No transfers. No groceries. No, just this once. I watched my bank account slowly stabilize for the first time in years. I had enough to start saving, really saving. Not just for emergencies, but for my future. A future that didn't include panic texts from Mom or guilt trips from Marcus. But the peace only lasted about 3 months. It started with a message from my mom. Aaron, your dad just got a notice from the bank. Something about the house. Can you please call? I didn't respond. Not because I didn't care, but because I already knew what something meant. It always meant money. Days later, my phone lit up again, this time with Dad's name. I let it go to voicemail. His tone had changed. Less asking, more pressure. We need to talk. The house situation is serious. I stayed silent. Then came the flood. Calls, texts, voicemails. First calm, then pleading, then angry. Are you really going to abandon your family? Everyone's struggling. You don't get to just walk away. I changed my work number, blocked a few emails, but the messages still found their way in, like water seeping under a locked door. I read them sometimes, late at night, more out of habit than hope. Some were paragraphs long, reminders of how cold I'd become, how I used to be the glue. And maybe they were right. Maybe I was cold now. But I wasn't bitter. I was healing, slowly, quietly, in a space where no one could take from me anymore. One Monday afternoon, just as I was locking up my office for the day, my phone buzzed again. It was Marcus. I didn't answer. But this time, his voicemail wasn't pleading. It was sharp, almost bitter. What do you think you're doing? Feeling proud of yourself? You don't just get to walk away from your family because your life's easier now. If Mom and Dad lose the house, that's on you. I stood there in the parking lot, frozen, played the message again, then again. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilt. I felt something colder, a kind of disbelief that after years of skipped meals, canceled plans, and over $20,000 quietly sent, what I got in return was blame. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I typed a reply, calm, factual, brutal. I've covered my part and yours for years. If things fall apart now, maybe you should be asking who never did anything. But I didn't send it. I deleted it. Because I knew no sentence, no perfectly worded truth would ever change how they saw me. To them, I was never Erin the daughter, or Erin the sister. I was Erin the solution. And when the solution stopped functioning, all that remained was resentment. That night, just after I got home from a late meeting, a message from Dad popped up. "Erin, why haven't you paid the mortgage this month? The bank's pressing us. Now." I froze mid-step in the hallway. The words didn't hit like a shock. They landed like a slap I saw coming. I had stopped all financial support nearly 6 months ago. No money, no talks, nothing. And yet here he was, still messaging me like I was on some kind of automatic payment plan they forgot to cancel. But what truly shook me wasn't the message. It was the phrasing. "Pressing us now." Not pressing you. Us. Like I was still part of the problem. My stomach twisted. My palms went cold. Something was off, and this time I wasn't going to guess. I was going to find out. That evening, I made a cup of tea, sat at the edge of my bed, and opened my laptop. I logged into the old mortgage account, the one under Dad's name. I had never checked it before. I'd always trusted them. I was their daughter. Why wouldn't I? I scrolled through the transaction history, eyes scanning each line like I was auditing a stranger's lie. And then I saw it. The last mortgage payment made from that account was dated 8 months ago. 8 months. Which meant the last 3 months I kept sending money after I thought they were still paying. Those payments had gone somewhere else, not to the mortgage. Not to the house. Nearly $3,000 disappeared. No explanation, no apology, no heads up. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, heart thudding against my ribs, as the weight of betrayal settled in. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about trust. And the part that broke me most wasn't the missing dollars. It was realizing they had lied, willingly, repeatedly, to the one person who'd always said yes. I didn't call them that night. I needed answers, yes. But not while my voice was shaking. Not when my hands still trembled from what I'd seen. I needed clarity, not confrontation. So the next morning, I brewed my coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and called the bank. This time not as a daughter, but as someone who had for 2 years unofficially managed a house she didn't live in. I explained the situation calmly. The representative on the line was kind, polite, methodical. After verifying my identity and the account history, she confirmed what I already feared. This account hasn't had a full mortgage payment since January. It's now in special collections. The total past due is $6,480. I thanked her, hung up, and just sat there, not crying, not panicking, just silent. The kind of silence that comes when the truth finally replaces the excuses you've been fed for years. The money I'd sent in good faith hadn't just gone unused, it had vanished, rerouted, covered up, and not one of them, not Mom, not Dad, not Marcus, had said a word. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay on the couch, blanket pulled to my chin, lights still on. My brain replayed every message, every late-night emergency, every reassurance that they were doing their best. I remembered Mom's voice trembling, telling me they couldn't eat without my help. Dad saying, "It's only temporary, honey." And Marcus, lounging on the couch with zero shame, talking about how he needed space to figure things out. But what hurt the most wasn't the deception. It was the realization that they never planned to stop. That even if I had kept sending money, nothing would have changed. They would have taken and taken and taken until there was nothing left. So I finally texted Dad, just one line. "I just spoke with the bank. They said the mortgage is 8 months overdue. I kept sending money. What happened?" There was no reply. Not right away. But 15 minutes later, The phone rang. It was him. I didn't answer. I let it ring once, then twice, then a third time. And still, I didn't pick up. I sat there on the floor, my back against the cabinet, the phone buzzing like a reminder of the version of me they still thought existed, the Aaron who'd pick up, who'd fix it, who'd send another check and say, "It's okay." But that version of me was gone. Eventually he called again, this time later at 10 p.m. I stared at the screen, hands cold, chest heavy. Then I picked up. His voice was low, quiet. "So, I guess you found out." I didn't raise mine. I didn't just find out. I confirmed it. There was a long pause. "I know you're angry, but it's not what you think." I gave a dry, bitter laugh. "I sent money for the house. The house didn't get paid for. What part of that isn't what I think?" And then, from the background, Mom's voice, sharp and defensive. "Aaron, don't talk to your father like that. You don't understand what we've been dealing with since you left." I closed my eyes, took a breath, and for the first time, I didn't try to explain. I didn't try to comfort. I was done patching holes in a sinking ship that none of them even tried to save. Mom's voice was trembling now, not from sadness, but from fury barely held back. "You think this is easy for us? Your father's back is getting worse. Brandon's job fell through again. The house is falling apart. What do you expect us to do?" I kept my voice low. "Figure it out." There was silence on the line. A heavy pause, the kind that makes the air feel thick. Then I heard her say, in that same familiar tone she used when I was 12 and didn't want to lend Marcus, "My allowance. Families are supposed to help each other." I exhaled slowly. "Help has a limit, Mom, and you passed it a long time ago." Another silence, but this one stung more. Because I could hear it now, not just the desperation, but the disbelief. The realization that their walking lifeline was slipping from reach. And then, just like always, Brandon jumped in. His voice burst through the background, sharp and arrogant. "You're blowing this way out of proportion. You're acting like the whole world owes you something just because you got a decent job. It's not that deep, Aaron." I laughed, a short, humorless sound. "The world doesn't owe me anything. But this house, this family, it owed me respect. And it never gave it." He scoffed. "You weren't like this before." My voice went cold. "Before, I was just tired and too afraid to say no. Before, I still believed I could earn your approval. Now I know better." Dad came back on the line then. His voice was quieter than before, tired, maybe even ashamed. "We messed up, okay? But you're all we've got. We'll pay you back, I promise." I didn't respond right away. I just stared at the ceiling, heart heavy, fingers wrapped around the phone like it might slip away if I loosened my grip. "How many times have I heard that promise?" I finally said. He didn't answer, because we both knew the truth. There was never any intention of paying me back, only the assumption that I'd always be there. Then he said it, the line they had been building toward since the start. "If you don't help, we could lose the house. We're about to lose everything." I closed my eyes. The words settled into my chest like ice. "Then lose it." My voice didn't shake. "Because it's not mine to save anymore." His breath caught on the other end. I could hear Mom sniffling, now, and Brandon muttering something. Maybe selfish, maybe cold, maybe dramatic. I didn't care. "You can't just walk away from your family," Dad said. His voice cracked on the word family. But I could, and I had. "I've been carrying this family for almost a decade," I said. calmly, firmly. And the moment I stop, I become the villain? No. I'm done. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply said what needed to be said. You all need to learn how to live without me. That's the only thing I'm leaving behind. And then I hung up. Not out of anger. Out of peace. After I hung up, I didn't cry. I didn't scream or pace or crumble the way I might have 6 months earlier. I just sat there in the stillness of my apartment, listening to the hum of the fridge and the quiet city outside my window. Then I powered off my phone and left it on the table, untouched, for 3 full days. No texts, no calls, no pleas or guilt-laced voicemails, just silence. And for the first time, that silence didn't scare me. It comforted me. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. I brewed my coffee, wrapped myself in my favorite old sweater, and stepped onto the tiny balcony that overlooked a cracked parking lot and a few potted plants I'd started to keep alive. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, but the sky was soft and gold, stretching across the horizon like a fresh beginning. My apartment was modest. Chipped paint, creaky floors, a sink that sometimes gurgled at night. But it was mine. There were no 6 a.m. wake-up calls asking if I could book a doctor's appointment. No panicked midnight texts about unpaid gas bills. No Marcus asking for just a little help with rent again. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't living in response to someone else's emergency. I spent weekends reading, cooking, learning. I wandered through the trails at Freedom Park with a quiet kind of wonder. I didn't have to hold my phone to my ear while pushing a grocery cart full of food for people who wouldn't even say thank you. I stopped checking my banking app with dread. Slowly my savings began to grow, a little bit at a time, like planting, something in soil that had finally been cleared of weeds. But even peace has shadows. Around month 3, the messages started again. My phone lit up with one from Mom. Your father just got another warning from the bank. This can't go on. Call me. I stared at the message for a long time. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't care, but because I knew. Because it was never really about the house. It was never about safety, or stability, or health. It was about the money. Always the money. A few days later, Dad called. I let it ring. Then again. Then again. Their voices shifted with each call. First calm, then desperate, then bitter. I read every word they sent, line by line, not to feel close to them, but to remind myself what I was leaving behind. Are you really this heartless? You're not the daughter we raised. Everyone's struggling and you just walk away? I didn't reply, because I had already walked away, and not out of pride, not out of punishment, but because I had finally learned the most painful, liberating truth of all. You can't save people who refuse to stand up for themselves, and you cannot pour your life into a well that never holds water. Some nights, though, the quiet gets heavy. When the workday ends and the sky outside turns that deep, inky blue, there's nothing left to distract me. And in that stillness, doubt sometimes slips in. Quiet, uninvited. It whispers questions that linger longer than they should. Did I go too far? I cut everything. Every transfer, every favor, every call. I watched a house I once saved edge toward foreclosure, knowing I could stop it with a single payment, and I didn't. I let the people who raised me sit in the consequences of their own choices, and sometimes the guilt bubbles up when I least expect it. Because guilt doesn't need permission. It doesn't wait for logic or fairness. It just shows up, usually in the quiet, when you're too tired to keep your guard up. There were days I'd replay old voicemails, not because I missed them, but because I needed to hear their voices. I needed to remind myself that their words were never warm unless they came wrapped in need. I listened as Mom said, "You'll regret this. That house means everything to me." And Dad, We're out of options. You're the only one who can help. Then Marcus, short and sharp. You're letting this family fall apart just because of your pride. I didn't cry. I didn't even flinch. I just felt tired. Tired of being told that sacrifice is love, that silence is betrayal, that being the good one means being the one who never says no. For years, they said I was the glue, the pride of the family. But that pride was only spoken out loud when it served them, never when I actually needed to feel it. I remembered nights I'd stayed up until 2 a.m., balancing spreadsheets for clients, only to wake up to texts from Marcus complaining that I wasn't present enough. I remembered canceling the only vacation I'd saved for in years, because Dad suddenly needed dental work. And I remembered how Mom looked at me with disappointment the one time I said I was exhausted, like I had broken some silent contract, just by being human. And yet, I stayed. I gave. I held it all together. Until I didn't. That's what they can't forgive. Not the money. Not the silence. What they can't forgive is that I finally chose me. I sat on the edge of my bed one night, fingers tracing the edges of a worn blanket I'd brought from the old house. My mind looped the same question over and over. What if they do lose everything? What if they really end up with nowhere to go? And a quieter voice, softer but steady, answered, "You kept them from falling apart for nearly a decade. That can't be erased because you stopped 6 months ago. People forget kindness quickly when they grow used to it. But I haven't forgotten. I wasn't perfect. Maybe I was too firm. But I wasn't wrong. Because if I hadn't drawn the line, I wouldn't just be broke. I'd be broken. I'm not telling this story because I want applause. I'm not waiting for someone to say, 'You were right, Aaron.' That's not what this is about. I'm telling it because I want to understand. Because somewhere out there, I hope someone else has felt this too. Maybe you were the reliable one, the responsible one, the good kid. Maybe you were the one who held everyone together while no one noticed you were falling apart. Maybe you were the peacekeeper, the problem solver, the one who gave and gave until your hands were empty, only to be called ungrateful the first time you pulled them back. And maybe, like me, you've asked yourself, was I cruel for leaving? Was I selfish for choosing myself? Did I abandon them, or did I finally stop abandoning me? That's why I'm sharing this. Because healing doesn't always look like happiness. Sometimes it's standing in the middle of your apartment on a Sunday morning, making coffee with no interruptions, and realizing you haven't cried in weeks. Sometimes it's waking up and not checking your bank app with dread. Sometimes healing is boring, quiet, unremarkable, and yet peaceful. I still think about them, about the house, the porch I used to sit on in the fall, the way Mom used to hum while cooking. Even Marcus, when he wasn't asking for anything, could make me laugh like no one else. But I don't regret walking away, because love without boundaries is not love. It's servitude. And loyalty without reciprocity is not strength, it's self-neglect. I chose to live for myself, not to spite them, not to punish them, but because no one else was going to choose me. That's a kind of freedom I'm still learning how to carry. Even now, there are nights when I lie awake, wondering if the phone will ring again, wondering if they'll ever apologize, wondering if I'll ever be able to let go fully, not of the people, but of the version of myself I became around them. The version that believed love had to be earned. That sacrifice was the price of belonging. But with every morning that I wake up and choose peace, I get a little further from her. I step a little deeper into the woman I was always meant to be. And if you're still reading this, maybe you're in the middle of your own letting go. Maybe you're where I was 6 months ago. Scared, heartbroken, but finally awake. If you are, let me say this clearly. You're not cold. You're not heartless. You're not wrong for saying enough. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away from a version of family that only knows how to take. And if you're wondering whether the silence will break you, it won't. It'll rebuild you. One breath, one boundary, one quiet, steady morning at a time.